Hey, this is Sonia from An Enthusiastic Reader, and I'm doing my August/September wrap-up of the fiction that I read. I had a very good September overall, both personally and in my reading. We had a family reunion at the beginning of the month. My grandmother turned 90 years old this month, and so a lot of people came from out of town, and we had a fun barbecue and just celebrated her 90th birthday. And then the next weekend, I went on a girls' trip with two girlfriends, and we went to Steamboat Springs, and they had this thing called a literary sojourn, which is a big fundraiser for their library in Steamboat. And it was amazing. There were so many people in the audience, and then they had at least 5 major authors. Tayari Jones was there, Claire Massoud, Colin McCann was the MC for the event, Alice McDermott was there, Charles Fraser was there, and it was so much fun to hear these authors. They each had about 35 minutes to talk about their work and talk about their writing lives. They weren't there to read from their books, so it was more a conversation with the audience. And the room was packed, and it was just a lot of fun, and I got to spend some time with my friends, and so that was another highlight of the month. So on top of that, I read some good fiction. I got to read my very first Elizabeth Taylor novel, Elizabeth Taylor, the British novelist. Someone on Goodreads was having a read-along, so I read the first of Elizabeth Taylor's works. It was called At Mrs. Lippencote's, and it's kind of a funny name for a title, but it was about a woman who, she's a mother, she has a 9-year-old son, and she and her husband move in together. He'd been stationed away for World War II, and she went to be with him, and they're renting a woman's house. And the poor woman and her daughter have to live in a hotel while they're renting out this house to the couple. And in addition to the couple and the son, there's a cousin of the husband's who also lives in the house and is not a happy person. And it turns out that no one in that house is particularly happy. But there's some beautiful writing, some great characterization, and it takes really kind of an unexpected turn. The women end up making friends outside of the house with other people that the husband does absolutely not approve of. And they each kind of found their own way against his, demands for the way that they behave. And he wasn't that admirable. And I would recommend it if you're interested in a pretty short novel about marriage and war and motherhood and friendship outside and just finding yourself and finding a voice. Highly recommend it, and I can't wait to read more Elizabeth Taylor novels. I read a debut novel called The Golden State by Lydia Kiesling. I really like her. I've been reading her essays for many years. She's the editor now of themillions.com, which is a literary website that I've really enjoyed reading. And she's written some very fine essays, and I will link some down below. And this is her first novel. It's about a woman and her baby. She's a new mother. She works in a university, and one day at the beginning of the novel, she just packs up her car and doesn't tell anyone at work she's leaving, and she gets in the car and drives to a trailer she owns in Northern California that was given to her by her grandparents, and they are now have died, and her mother has died. And she is essentially having a nervous breakdown. Her husband is Turkish, and he was somehow tricked by immigration to giving his passport up when he went back to Turkey to study. He was just supposed to be gone a few weeks, and then he can't get back. So there's a lot in the book about the way we treat immigrants and also the bureaucracy of the system. And there were a lot of things I did love about the book. I don't think it's perfect. I think there was a bit of a rushed ending, and so it wasn't completely successful for me, but I do really admire the writing, and I'd like to see what the next book brings. So pick it up if you would like a book about, if any of that sounds like something you'd be interested in. I read 2 Louise Penny novels, mysteries from the Armand Gamache series. I read numbers 3 and 4. I don't think you probably want me to give you any kind of a plot. And I honestly don't know if I could really recount any of the mysteries from those 2 books, even though I just read them. But I do like the sensibility of this series. I do like to read mysteries here and there. I think they're a good palate cleanser when you've been reading heavier literary fiction. So I do like it. I like the fact that all the murders are connected to this small town in Canada. And I do really like the main detective, Armand Gamache. He is very sensitive and he's got a dark side, and but he has an ethical core. And so those are very pleasing, cozy mysteries, and I'll probably keep reading them as soon as they're available from my library. There's been a lot of talk on BookTube lately about rereading, the power of rereading. Dave at Wilde Reads did a whole video, which I'll link below, and I think Steve Donahue did a response, and I'm on Steve Donahue's side about thinking rereading is incredibly important. I think it helps you see where you've been and where you're going as a reader and how you can respond to the books you're reading. And so certain books I definitely turn back to, and so this time around I just wanted to listen to a good audiobook, and I decided to listen to Curtis Sittenfeld's American Wife, which is a retelling of the life of Laura Bush. And I don't think it got enough accolades when it was written about 9 years ago. I read it back then. I didn't remember many of the details, but did remember really enjoying it. So I picked it up from the library. I was able to borrow it again. And the reader was fantastic. She's my favorite audiobook reader. Her name's Kimberly Farr. So I had that going for me. And I would listen to it when I was walking. So I get a good hour in every day of listening to this very immersive 24-hour long novel about someone resembling the life of Laura Bush. And there's so many ethical quandaries and just kind of a portrait of what it was like to grow up during that time period for women and the expectations of women and what roles they were going to, be allowed to have. And so she's a strong, intelligent librarian, very, very empathetic, I'd say, and very likable. And even her husband that she fell in love with eventually was completely charming and very charismatic, but also had some ethical problems of his own. So if you didn't pick this up around when it came out the first time around, I'd say it's worth a try. I love Curtis Sittenfeld's sensibility, and I like her brain, and I've liked every book I've read by her. I still haven't read her new short stories, and they are definitely on my TBR. So coming up this next month, I'm going to reread The Thornbirds, which I read as a teenager, and I'm reading it for a book club. I'm in 2 book clubs, and so that's one of the picks for this month. So I will be getting into that. It's very long. I hope I like it. I remember nothing about it other than illicit romance with a priest. So looking forward to that. I'm more in the mood to reread than I am to start reading a bunch of dark books, so I may just spend the month doing that. I will read one Victorian novel for Victober. I think I'm going to read Mary Barton, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. And other than that, that was my August and September. I look forward to watching all your wrap-up videos. And so leave me notes in the comments if you'd like to. And happy reading in October. Thanks for watching. Bye.